Billionaire found his daughter being taught by a homeless girl. His reaction changed everything. Hey guys, welcome to another hit. Before I get started, kindly support by liking this video, sharing it with a friend, and subscribing if you haven't already, and don't forget to comment in the section. Your support means the world. Let's dive. Maurice Johnson never thought he'd raise his daughter alone. At 45 years old, he was the kind of man people whispered about when he walked into a room. His navy blue tailored suit always looked sharp enough to cut glass. His polished black shoes clicked like a metronome across the marble floors of his high-rise office, and the scent of imported cologne lingered long after he left. He wasn't just a man, he was a force. Maurice was a billionaire, a man who'd built an empire out of technology and real estate. His name appeared in Forbes. His face had graced the cover of Black Enterprise, and every business magazine in America had praised his rags-to-riches journey. What people didn't know was that beneath the glitz, the billions, and the well-practiced smile, he was a man quietly terrified of one thing: failing as a father. His daughter, Amara, was 13. She had her late mother's almond-shaped eyes and his stubborn chin. To the outside world, she had everything: a mansion in Atlanta's wealthiest neighborhood, drivers waiting at her beck and call, a school that cost more per semester than most families made in a year. But behind closed doors, Amara was struggling. School wasn't her friend. Numbers tangled her brain like cobwebs. Words blurred into mush on the page. Every time she raised her hand in class and got the wrong answer, the sting of laughter from her classmates left scars no one could see. Maurice tried tutors. 3 of them to be exact. Each one showed up with degrees from fancy universities, charging $300 an hour, promising miracles. But Amara only got quieter, retreating further into herself. And Maurice, Mr. Billionaire Genius himself, had no idea how to help his own daughter. On a humid Friday afternoon in June, Maurice got home early, determined to spend some time with Amara. Usually, his schedule kept him locked away in boardrooms, shaking hands, signing deals, and sipping coffee that cost more than a week's groceries. But today he had cleared everything. He expected to find his daughter in her room, probably scrolling TikTok or staring blankly at her homework. But when he called her name and no answer came, his chest tightened with panic. He checked her room. Me. The kitchen. Me. The backyard. Me. Amara. His voice echoed through the halls. Then he heard it, faint laughter coming from the side gate of the property. Morris's mansion was surrounded by manicured hedges and towering gates, designed to keep the world out. But somehow on the other side of those gates was his daughter, sitting cross-legged on the grass, books spread out around her, with a girl he had never seen before. The girl wore a faded ash-gray hoodie, sleeves pushed up to reveal thin arms, and pale blue jeans with a rip at the knee. Her old sneakers were scuffed to the bone, and her long curly hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail. She looked about the same age as Amara, maybe a year older, but there was something in her eyes that didn't belong to a child. Something hard. Something that had already seen too much of life. Amara was laughing. Not the polite, awkward laugh Maurice usually heard, but a real belly-deep laugh that made her cheeks glow. He froze. The stranger was pointing at Amara's math book. Nah, see, you were adding instead of multiplying. Watch, if you take 4 groups of 6, that's 24. Easy. Amara slapped her forehead. Oh, that makes sense. You got it, the girl grinned. Don't overthink it. Teachers like to make stuff harder than it is. Morris's heart clenched. His daughter looked alive, engaged, happy. And this homeless-looking girl, dressed in rags compared to Amara's sundress and white sneakers, had done in 10 minutes what highly paid tutors couldn't manage in months. He stepped forward, gravel crunching under his shoes. Both girls looked up. Amara's face lit up. Daddy! The homeless girl scrambled to her feet, pulling her hoodie sleeves down nervously, eyes darting to the gate as if she was ready to run. Maurice raised a hand. It's okay. I'm not mad. What's your name? The girl hesitated. Shade. Shade, he repeated, tasting the name. Suited her, Tough, sharp, protective. Amara chimed in. Daddy, Shade was just helping me with my homework. She's really good at explaining stuff. Shade's eyes flickered, cautious. I didn't mean no harm, sir. I was just. Maurice studied her. The hoodie was worn thin, like it had been washed too many times in too cold water. Her sneakers were the kind you saw in thrift bins. And her eyes told him everything. She was homeless. Every instinct screamed at him to protect his daughter, to send this stranger away. But another part of him, the part that saw his daughter's joy, whispered, "Don't ruin this." That night Maurice couldn't sleep. He sat in his leather armchair, staring out at the city lights. Why was his daughter learning better from a homeless girl than from Ivy League tutors? What did this Shade have that they didn't? He thought of his own childhood in the projects, of the teachers who ignored him, the neighbors who doubted him, the moments when only street smarts kept him alive. He had clawed his way to the top because someone, once upon a time, believed he was worth more than what the world told him. Maybe Shade was cut from the same cloth. Maybe this meeting wasn't an accident. Maurice decided then and there. He needed to know more about her. Maurice Johnson had negotiated billion-dollar mergers. He had faced down ruthless CEOs, turned hostile boardrooms into loyal partners, and built his empire with a kind of fearless resolve people called legendary. But nothing had prepared him for the decision before him now. That Saturday morning, after stumbling on Amara's secret friendship with the homeless girl Shade, he couldn't stop thinking about it. All night, questions rattled in his brain. Who was Shade really? Where did she come from? Was she safe for his daughter to be around? But alongside the doubts, another question cut deeper. If I push her away, what happens to Amara? Because for the first time in months, his daughter had laughed. Not the polite smile she gave at gala dinners, not the forced grin when the paparazzi snapped pictures, but a laugh so real it shook Maurice to his core. The next morning, Maurice made a decision. He wasn't going to forbid Shade from seeing Amara. Not yet. He needed to learn more. So, while Amara was at her piano lesson, Maurice asked one of his private drivers, Terence, to help him discreetly follow Shade. Terence was a tall, broad-shouldered black American man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a voice deep enough to make a whole room hush. He'd been with Maurice since the early days, back when Maurice only owned one car and barely scraped by. Terence didn't ask questions. He simply nodded. "I'll find out, boss." By evening, Terence came back with a file. "She's been living in an abandoned shelter near West End," Terence explained, setting a stack of papers on Morris's mahogany desk. "Goes to the library almost every day. Reads a lot. Math, science, history. Girl's smart, real smart. But..." He hesitated. "But what?" Maurice pressed. "She's alone." Maurice flipped through the file. Shay Jackson, 14 years old. No official address. No school enrollment since 2 years ago. Her mother had died from an overdose. Father unknown. She had bounced through foster care, but records showed she'd run away after repeated abuse complaints. Morris's throat tightened. He remembered being her age. Hungry. Desperate. Too proud to beg, too scared to hope. And now here she was, teaching his daughter. That night, Maurice joined Amara for dinner. The table was long, almost comically so, with polished silverware glinting under the chandelier. Normally, Amara picked at her food in silence, lost in her own thoughts. But tonight she looked brighter. "Daddy," she said carefully, "you're not mad about Shade, are you?" Maurice paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Why would I be mad?" "Because she's different," Amara admitted. "The kids at school, they'd laugh if they knew I was hanging out with her. They think homeless kids are dirty or dumb. But Shade isn't like that, Daddy. She's amazing. She makes me feel smart. She makes me believe I can actually learn." Her voice cracked at the last word, and Maurice felt something break inside him. When Amara was born, he'd promised his late wife he would give their daughter everything. But he realized now that the one thing she needed most, belief in herself, he hadn't been able to give. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "if Shade makes you feel that way, then I'm not mad. In fact," he leaned closer, his deep voice lowering, "I want to meet her again. Properly." Amara's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" The next weekend, Maurice arranged for Shade to come to the mansion. Not through the back gate this time, but through the front door. When the butler opened it, Shade froze on the steps, clutching her backpack like a shield. She was wearing the same ash-gray hoodie and pale blue jeans, her sneakers still fraying at the edges. Her long curly ponytail looked freshly brushed, as if she'd tried her best to prepare for this moment. Inside, the marble floors gleamed. The chandeliers sparkled. The air smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. Shade's eyes darted around, overwhelmed. Amara rushed forward and hugged her. "Shade, you came." Maurice watched silently as the two girls chattered like they had known each other forever. Shade's guard slowly began to drop, though her hands still twisted nervously. Finally, Maurice cleared his throat. "Shade," he said warmly, "why don't you join us for dinner?" Her eyes widened. "Dinner? With you?" "Yes, with us." Dinner was awkward at first. Shade sat stiffly, barely touching the roasted chicken and vegetables placed before her. She seemed terrified of spilling something on the pristine tablecloth. Maurice decided to break the ice. "Amara tells me you're quite the teacher." Shade shrugged, eyes lowered. I like books. Math makes sense to me. It's like a puzzle and I like puzzles. So when she was struggling, I thought maybe I could help." Maurice studied her. She was sharp, honest, unpolished, but brilliant in her own way. "You remind me of myself," he said finally. Shade blinked. "Me? How?" "I didn't grow up with much either. People used to call me crazy for dreaming big. But books saved me too. And eventually, they opened doors I never thought I'd walk through." For the first time, Shade looked him in the eyes. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a shared understanding of what it meant to be underestimated, to rise from ashes. After dinner, Amara dragged Shade upstairs to her room, eager to show her posters, her piano, her sketchbooks. Maurice stayed behind, pacing the dining room. Terence stepped in quietly. "So, what do you think?" Maurice sighed. "I think she's special. And I think if we don't do something, the world's going to eat her alive before she even gets a chance to shine." He looked up at the grand portrait of his late wife hanging above the fireplace. Her smile seemed to whisper back, "Do the right thing, Maurice." The weight of his choice pressed down. Shade wasn't just some girl anymore. She was hope, both for herself and for his daughter. And Maurice Johnson had never been a man to ignore hope. Shade couldn't sleep that night. The marble floors, the chandelier, the dining table long enough to seat 20 people. It all replayed in her mind like a dream she was scared to wake from. For so long, her world had been alleyways, empty shelters, and library corners. Suddenly, she had stepped into a palace. And what shook her most wasn't the mansion itself. It was the way Maurice Johnson had looked at her. Not with pity, not with suspicion, but with recognition. As if, for once in her life, someone saw her not as a homeless kid, but as a person who mattered. The following week, Maurice called her back. This time, Shade didn't come in through the gates alone. Amara was waiting outside in her yellow sundress, practically bouncing with excitement. She grabbed Shade's hand and whispered, "You're really part of us now." Shade wasn't sure what part of us meant, but the warmth in Amara's smile made her believe it. Inside, Maurice had arranged something unexpected. A private tutor. "Shade," Maurice said gently, "I know you've been teaching Amara, but I want to give you the chance to learn too. You deserve more than library scraps. You deserve real tools." Shade froze. Her throat tightened. "You mean school?" Maurice nodded. "Yes, but first let's start here. Few lessons. If you want them." Shade looked at him, then at Amara, who was grinning from ear to ear. Slowly, Shade whispered, I want them." Over the next weeks, a routine formed. Every Saturday, Shade arrived at the mansion in her ash-gray hoodie and pale blue jeans. Amara would pull her upstairs and they'd study together. Math equations, science experiments, even literature. The tutor, a kind black American woman named Mrs. Fields, was astonished. "This girl," Mrs. Fields told Maurice privately one evening, "is extraordinary. Her memory is sharp, her logic is advanced. She's 2, maybe 3 years ahead of her age group. If she had stability, she could go anywhere. Ivy League, scholarships, anything." Maurice listened, his jaw tightening. Shade had raw talent, but talent wasn't enough. The world didn't forgive where she came from. And Maurice knew the price of being underestimated. But not everyone was as welcoming. At a charity luncheon, Morris's longtime business partner, Leonard Whitaker, leaned across the white linen table. Leonard was a wealthy black American entrepreneur in his 60s, wearing a sharp cream suit and a smile too polished to be real. "Word around town," Leonard said casually, "is that you've got a house guest." Maurice sipped his wine. "A friend of Amara's." Leonard chuckled. "A homeless girl, Maurice." "Really? Do you have any idea what that looks like? The press will eat it alive. Investors will start whispering. We're building a reputation of power, prestige. Not charity cases." Morris's eyes hardened. "Leonard, prestige without humanity is worthless." Leonard raised an eyebrow. "Careful. Sentiment makes men weak." Maurice didn't answer, but his hands curled into fists under the table. Back at the mansion, the friendship between Shade and Amara blossomed. One evening, Maurice found them sitting on the balcony, the city skyline glowing in the distance. Shade was teaching Amara multiplication tricks using bottle caps. Amara's laughter rang out like music. Maurice leaned on the doorframe, watching quietly. "Daddy!" Amara spotted him. "Did you know Shade can solve a Rubik's Cube in 2 minutes?" Shade blushed. "Not always, too." Maurice smiled faintly. "That's impressive. But Shade, let me ask you something. If you could be anything in the world, anything, what would you want to be?" Shade's hands froze on the cube. No one had ever asked her that. Finally she whispered, "A teacher. Or maybe, an inventor. Something where I can build things that last. Something that makes people proud." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Morris's chest ached. He saw himself in her more than ever. The storm broke 2 weeks later. A paparazzi photo leaked. Shade walking into the Johnson estate, clutching her backpack, Amara by her side. Within hours, headlines exploded. "Billionaire's daughter befriends homeless girl. Is he losing his edge?" Maurice Johnson playing savior. Investors concerned over image. At a board meeting, Leonard slammed a copy of the paper down. "This is what I warned you about. Your softness is costing us. Stocks are already twitching. We need damage control." Maurice stood slowly, his voice low but steady. "The only thing damaging this company is the belief that compassion is weakness. Shade is not an embarrassment. She is proof that resilience exists where the world least expects it. And I will not apologize for giving her a chance." The room fell silent. Some looked skeptical. Others looked inspired. But Maurice knew the battle was only beginning. That evening, Shade overheard part of the fallout. She had been sitting in the hallway when she caught snippets of voices. Investors, critics, even neighbors whispering ugly things. "She doesn't belong there. She'll drag them down. Trash doesn't turn into treasure." The words cut like knives. That night, Shade tried to slip away quietly, her backpack slung over her shoulder. But Maurice caught her at the gate. "Where are you going?" he demanded. Shade's voice shook. "Back where I belong." Morris's eyes burned. "No, you belong here. You belong anywhere you're willing to fight for. Don't you dare let their voices drown out yours." Tears welled in Shade's eyes. "But why me? Why are you doing this?" Maurice took a deep breath. "Because once, someone gave me a chance when the world said I didn't deserve one. And if I don't do the same for you, then everything I've built means nothing." Shade's shoulders trembled. Slowly she nodded. And in that moment, a new kind of family began to form. Not by blood, not by wealth, but by choice. Maurice knew the road ahead would not be easy. But as he looked at Shade and then at Amara, he felt certain of one thing. The future was brighter with both of them in it. Shade thought she was ready. She had faced hunger, cold nights, and strangers' cruelty. She had survived alleys where people disappeared and streets where hope was stolen. But nothing prepared her for the cruelty of whispers that came with wealth. First, it was small things. Sideways glances from staff in pressed uniforms. Parents who pulled their children closer when Shade walked by. A girl at Amara's ballet class who wrinkled her nose and muttered, "Why is she even here?" Shade told herself it didn't matter. But each look, each whisper, dug into her like tiny blades. The worst came at Amara's school. Maurice had pulled strings to let Shade sit in on classes, just as a guest. Shade arrived in her usual ash-gray hoodie and pale blue jeans, clutching her notebook like it was armor. She sat in the back of the classroom, quiet, focused. At first, the teacher welcomed her politely. But midway through the lesson, a boy raised his hand. "Why's a homeless girl in our class?" he blurted. The room erupted in laughter. Shade froze. Heat rushed to her face. Her chest tightened. "She smells like the street," another girl whispered loudly. Shade's pen shook in her hand. She wanted to vanish into the floor. Amara slammed her hands on the desk. "Stop it. She's smarter than all of you combined. Shade's my best friend, and she belongs here." The teacher's nervous laugh did little to calm the storm. By the end of the day, Shade sat on the steps outside, her eyes wet, her notebook pressed tight to her chest. When Maurice pulled up in his black SUV, he knew instantly something had gone wrong. That night, Shade begged him, "Please don't make me go back." Maurice's jaw tightened. He wanted to fight every parent, every child, every cruel whisper. But he also knew that anger wasn't enough. Instead, he said softly, "You don't have to prove yourself to people who can't see your worth. But Shade, you have a gift. And I won't let the world waste it." Shade looked at him broken. "But they'll never accept me." Maurice leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then we'll stop asking for acceptance. We'll show them results." The opportunity came sooner than expected. Every year, Morris's company hosted a Youth Innovation Challenge, a competition where high school students pitched ideas to solve real-world problems. The winners often earned scholarships and internships. "Shade," Maurice said one evening, handing her the brochure. "I want you to enter." Shade's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm not even in school. I don't belong there." Morris's voice was firm. "You belong anywhere your mind can shine. Let them see what you're capable of." Amara clasped Shade's hands. "We'll do it together. I'll help you practice every night." For weeks, the Johnson mansion became a workshop. Shade pored over books, scribbled notes, and sketched diagrams late into the night. Her idea: a low-cost solar-powered learning tablet for children in underserved neighborhoods. Durable, easy to use, with preloaded lessons that didn't need Wi-Fi. "It's brilliant," Maurice told her one night, pride swelling in his chest. Not just an invention. A lifeline. But not everyone agreed. When word spread that Shade was competing, critics swarmed. Online forums buzzed with sneers. "Of course the billionaire's pet project gets a spot. Homeless girl playing genius. Please." Even Leonard cornered Maurice again, shaking his head. "You're staking your reputation on a stray. She fails, you fail. And the company fails with you." Morris's response was simple. "Then let the company fail. I will not fail her." The day of the competition arrived. Shade stood backstage in her ash-gray hoodie and pale blue jeans, clutching her prototype, a rough but functional version of her solar tablet. Her curls framed her face, but sweat glistened at her hairline. Amara hugged her tightly. "You've got this." Shade's heart pounded. She thought of every cruel laugh, every night on the streets, every time someone said she was nothing. Then she thought of Amara's smile. Of Morris's steady eyes. When her name was called, Shade walked onto the stage. The room was filled with wealthy parents, sharp-suited judges, and students dressed in crisp uniforms. She stood there, small but unshaken, and began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. She spoke about children like her, kids who had brains but no books, who had dreams but no internet. She showed how her tablet could light the way. When she finished, the room was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. Grew louder, louder, until the hall thundered with claps and cheers. Shade didn't win first place. She won people's hearts. The judges awarded her a special scholarship and mentorship program, praising her creativity and courage. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Even the local news picked it up. From streets to stage, homeless girl's invention wins hope. For the first time, Shade felt something she had never known before: pride. But the story didn't end there. That night, as Maurice tucked Amara into bed, she whispered, "Daddy, you changed her life." Maurice shook his head gently. "No, baby. She changed ours." Down the hall, Shade sat at her desk, holding the scholarship letter with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face. Not tears of shame this time, but of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place she belonged. Shade thought winning the scholarship would silence the doubts. She thought the ovation, the articles, the cameras flashing as she left the competition hall would finally make people see her differently. But she learned quickly. The world doesn't change overnight. The applause faded. The whispers returned. A week after the competition, Shade walked into the Johnson Mansion living room to find Maurice staring at the TV. His usually calm face was tight with anger. On the screen was a panel of wealthy commentators. "Let's be honest," one man scoffed. "This is nothing but a publicity stunt. A billionaire parades a homeless girl to make himself look charitable." "Please," a woman chimed in. "And let's not forget, her idea was cute, but it's naive. A street child inventing something revolutionary. Impossible without help." Maurice clicked off the screen, his jaw clenched. He looked at Shade. "You don't have to watch that trash," he said softly. But Shade had already heard every word. Street child. Leave. Impossible. The words burned. She stormed out of the room and into the garden, tears stinging her eyes. When Amara followed, Shade whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I am just a project." Amara grabbed her hand fiercely. "Don't you ever say that. You're my teacher, my friend, my sister. You're not a project, you're a miracle." Shade wanted to believe her. But deep inside, doubt gnawed at her heart. The real blow came 2 weeks later. Shade's scholarship was suddenly revoked. The official letter claimed her application documents could not be verified, and questions about her background raised eligibility concerns. Maurice was furious. "This is politics. Someone pulled strings to block you." Shade broke down. "I knew it. I knew they'd never let me rise. I don't belong in your world, Maurice. I don't belong in any world." She packed her small bag, planning to leave the mansion quietly that night. She couldn't bear to watch everything crumble again. But Maurice caught her at the door. "You think running solves this?" he asked, his deep voice trembling with both anger and love. "I can't keep being their joke," Shade cried. "I can't keep being the girl who doesn't deserve to dream." Maurice walked closer, placing his hands firmly on her shoulders. "You are not their joke. You are their fear. Because if a girl from the streets can rise, then their excuses crumble. Shade, you are what they're afraid of becoming, and what they're afraid they'll never be." Shade's tears fell, but her breathing steadied. For the first time she believed him. Maurice decided enough was enough. He called a press conference. The room was packed, reporters, cameras, flashing lights. The same voices who had mocked Shade were waiting to tear her apart again. Maurice stood at the podium, his navy blue suit crisp, his voice commanding. "You've all questioned my choice to mentor Shade Williams. You've called her a fraud, a project, a publicity stunt. Today I'm here to tell you the truth. He gestured toward the side. Shade stepped out slowly, in her familiar ash-gray hoodie and pale blue jeans, curls framing her nervous face. She walked to the podium, clutching her prototype tablet. Maurice placed a hand on her shoulder. "This young woman," he said, voice ringing, "is not a stunt. She is the future. She has lived through fires most of us couldn't survive. She has taught herself things most schools don't teach. And she has built something this world desperately needs. If you can't see that, the failure is not hers. It's yours." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed in. Shade swallowed hard, then spoke. Her voice shook at first, but soon grew stronger. "I am Shade Williams. I was born with nothing. I slept under bridges. I taught myself to read in a library no one wanted me in. I don't have a fancy name or pedigree. But I have ideas. I have fight. And I will not go back to being invisible." The room fell silent. Then applause erupted. Not from everyone but from enough. Morris's boldness had turned the tide. Shade's words had lit the fire. Within days her story went viral. Social media exploded with hashtags. Hashtag from shadows to light. Hashtag Shade the scholar. Hashtag let her rise. People across the country, especially in Black American communities, rallied behind her. Crowdfunding campaigns began. Celebrities offered support. Educators volunteered to refine her design. And then came the call. A major tech foundation invited Shade to partner on her tablet project. They offered her a full scholarship to any university she wanted, plus a seat at their innovation lab. For the first time, the doors weren't just cracked open. They were wide opened. Months later, Shade stood at a polished podium again. But this time it wasn't a press conference. It was the launch of her invention. She wore her ash-gray hoodie still, not as a sign of poverty, but as a badge of honor. Her pale blue jeans were the same. She had promised herself she wouldn't forget where she came from. Behind her, a banner read, "The Shade Foundation. Technology for every child." Maurice sat in the front row, Amara beside him, both smiling with pride. Shade's voice rang clear. "This isn't about me. It's about every child who was told they didn't belong. Every dreamer who had no tools. Every voice that was silenced. Today we change that. Because brilliance doesn't belong to the wealthy. It belongs to everyone." The crowd rose in thunderous applause. That night, Shade returned to the empty lot where she once slept under broken streetlights. She stood there in silence, the city glowing in the distance. Amara ran up beside her, holding her hand. Maurice stood behind them, his presence steady and protective. Shade whispered into the night, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "Mama, Eddie, you made it. We made it." And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a homeless girl. She felt like home. What would you have done if this was you? Comment below, I'll reply. If you loved this story, subscribe for more emotional and inspiring stories every week. Thank you.